Deep in the Scottish Borders, Kelso is home to one of the 4 great Borders Abbeys. But there's something else here, something hidden, something lost. One of Scotland's strongest castles and wealthiest towns flourished between these rivers. Now they're gone, but Molly and I are on the hunt to find what's left of old Roxburgh. This is episode 3 of my series exploring the Borders Abbeys. We've already shown you Melrose and Dryborough. Remember, if you enjoy stories from Scotland's history and folklore that bring incredible places to life, then make sure to give me a follow so you don't miss the next one. Kelso is just over an hour south of Edinburgh, or about 20 minutes from Dryborough if you're following along my route through some beautiful parts of the countryside as well.
The old looking ruin behind me is all that's left of Kelso Abbey, and thanks to conservation works, even that has been locked up for the last few years, and it's probably going to be locked up for a wee bit more. So you'll need to use your imagination, squint a bit, maybe squint a lot, and we can roll back around 900 years to when the Abbey was founded by King David in 1128.
Now imagine this: soaring towers, echoing cloisters, and a chants of dozens of monks drifting over the Tweed.
He invited Tyrrhenensians, I think I've pronounced that right, to found Kelso Abbey here, right where the River Teviot meets the River Tweed. Now, we are only 5 or 6 miles in that direction from the English border, so this is a big statement from David. You know, he was on good terms with our southern neighbours, but more importantly, he was strong enough to defend his borders. However, not every king who followed David could make the same claim, and Kelso Abbey was to suffer as the centuries went on. There was a very important town and castle just over the river. We're going to go there soon. That was Roxburgh, and it was a big target for any marauding English armies. And Kelso found itself burned to the ground time and time again. First off during the Wars of Independence, and then lastly during the War of the Rough Wooing in the mid-1500s. It's said that during one raid, the monks of the Abbey didn't want the expensive bells of Kelso to be stolen, so they hid them over there in the River Tweed. However, when the coast was clear and they went back to get them, they couldn't find them anymore. And it's said that on dark, stormy nights, the sound of the bells can still be heard tolling from somewhere beneath the water. My favourite story from Kelso Abbey comes from near the end of its life in the 1500s, and it just happens to be a story from the Scotland's Stories book. So I forgot to bring myself a copy, so prepare for a voiceover, but I'll put a link in the caption of the video so anybody who wants to pick up a copy can. Trust me, it's worth it. But then again, I would say that.
Here is some shameless self-promotion of the Scotland's Stories book, which is packed full of tales, both history and folklore from real places all around Scotland, and I will put a link in the bio if you want to pick up a copy for yourself. But here it is, the story about defending Kelso Abbey. During one particularly fierce attack by an English army in the 1540s, this religious building was transformed into a makeshift castle. Kelso town was easily secured by the invaders, but a small garrison of townsfolk had barricaded themselves inside the abbey. Putting up a good fight, they were eventually forced right into the highest tower by cannon fire, where they could make their last stand. It was clearly a lost cause, and the wisest abseiled down the walls to escape as best they could, while the bravest stayed on to fight, just to be killed the next day. Kelso Abbey was destroyed, and after a reformation in 1560, it wasn't worth rebuilding. Most of the stone was recycled throughout the town, apart from a few soaring walls to remind us of this once impressive building. That's like a short part, because I'd already told you half of the other part of the story before. But anyway, pick up a copy. You'll love it.
After the Scottish Reformation in 1560, there was no need for these enormous, costly abbeys anymore, and they were slowly dismantled. There'll be plenty of buildings around the town of Kelso with stone pilfered from these old walls. in them. There are still some beautiful architectural elements to see even from outside the gates though. So it's tucked away here, right in the middle of the town that grew up in its shadow. And it doesn't get very much attention. It's not quite as impressive as the other ones anymore. There are 3 abbeys. But it was important enough in its day for King David I, the one who founded most of the abbeys in Scotland, to bury his only son in its grounds. Now we don't know exactly where, but I imagine it would be beneath the high altar. But anyway, like I said, there's lots more to see around Kelso, so let's go for a walk. Yeah, well, this was once part of the abbey grounds anyway. I don't know if it was part of any of this was part of the old abbey building. It's now the tombs for the Dukes of Roxburgh. Live nearby in Fleur's Castle. Now, Kelso is what I would call a bustling market town, you know. It's pretty busy here, even though it's a Thursday morning, not the most exciting time. Walter Scott went to school here and he called it the most beautiful, if not romantic, village in Scotland. Well, it's a bit more than a village. This muckle thing is the Kelso stone. Huge lump of stone, like a big cobble. I don't know, it was imported from somewhere wild like India or Egypt or something like that. And it is inscribed with the names of different communities from around Kelso in the area. People from them came and carved it in their own handwriting, which I think is pretty special. However, it's a different cobble that I really want to show you, and it is down that street there, which I think is maybe Roxburgh Street. I could be wrong. Just where the post is going. Every time I come looking for this, it takes me ages to find. It's definitely here somewhere. I found it. So, if anybody needs to find what I'm looking for, it's outside Semichem. So this horseshoe in the cobbles is said to have been shed by Bonnie Prince Charlie's horse during the 1745 Jacobite Rising. Now, the Jacobites did stay here for 2 nights in November at least, and in fact were so close to the English border they sent over a small group to go and proclaim Charles's father as king down in England, and then they came back to the relative safety of Kelso. And then eventually when the army did cross over, it was a terrible omen. As they all went, as they crossed the border into England, everybody drew their swords, lifted them in the air, and, you know, huzzah and all of that. But Donald Cameron of Lochiel, chief of the Camerons, cut his hand as he drew his sword, which was seen as a terrible, terrible omen. And well, if you don't know that story, I'll just give you a spoiler. They were right. This graveyard is in what was the old abbey grounds. It's very, very common for old ruined abbeys, monasteries, old Catholic churches to become local graveyards for the town. And this one is beautiful. I mean, it is a real kind of haven in the middle of the town, a big green space, as long as you don't mind thinking about what is here.
So that's the modern town of Kelso, but if you head across the River Tweed, I'm going to show you what's left of the much older town of Roxburgh. Prepare yourself, it's changed a little from its heyday 800 or 900 years ago.
I've come just a very short distance away from Kelso. You can walk here, but you know, I'm using Molly's old legs as an excuse to drive and park nearby. She is 14 after all. But I'm heading to the site of Roxburgh, old Roxburgh, Roxburgh Castle. Well, not just Roxburgh Castle, but Roxburgh town. And in fact, this field next to me, now it's just, I think it's actually used for show jumping, horse riding. I don't know, I'm not a horsey person. But that was once one of Scotland's, if not the richest place in Scotland, the wealthiest. So it was right where the Teviot and the Tweed, the two rivers met. So all the towns and the borders and things that were on those two rivers went through Roxburgh before they got to Berwick upon Tweed, which was the port on the way out. So Roxburgh was like the site of the Royal Mint and everything. Very, very important place.
There might not be much left of the town, but the thing that gets me excited is the site of the old castle.
And Molly will be happy because she gets off the lead. Come on in, let's go. Still a bit of life left in those old legs, as you can see. She limps from now and again, but it's hard to hold her back. She still wants to go, still wants to run like she used to. And it's hard for me to tell her no. She also loves going swimming, so I better get away from the river. Molly, this way. This way, come on. Come on. You can see it there, just across the river, on the bank of the river. That long mound, that's what we're going up. There's my spirit animal, there's the heron. I swear herons follow me around. I think the same heron follows me around. Pops up everywhere. Here's where things get a little bit trickier. There is roughly a path, but it really isn't great. So I know it's not really much to look at today, but this was the site of one of Scotland's strongest castles. Built on this high mound, wedged between the rivers Tweed and the river Teviot, Roxburgh was considered pretty much impregnable. And even today, without any defences, it's a steep climb up. Once you're up at the top of the mound, things start to make a wee bit more sense. But you can see this castle spread right along this slope. That's where we came up. This is where we're going, through here. The thing that always amazes me is that these stones, somebody, human hands, some person, placed these stones here somewhere between, what, 900 and maybe 600 years ago. I know this little chunk doesn't look very impressive, but you just need to use your imagination a wee bit. Now you can't really miss it from up here since it's absolutely massive. That is Fleur's Castle. Some people call it Floor's Castle. I've heard it pronounced both ways, and no matter what you say, somebody will shout at you for being wrong. So that is the home of the Duke of Roxburgh, and it's a visitor attraction. You can go, you can visit. You can walk around inside. You can't take any pictures or videos, so it doesn't really work well for a YouTube video or on social media or anything. But it's quite grand and opulent. You only really get in a few rooms. It doesn't have the longest of histories, but it's grand. I mean, look at it. If you like Downton Abbey, you're gonna like this. This is my nemesis. Stinging nails. Everywhere. It's like a wall of them. In trousers, I'd get through that, no problem. But if I'm not wearing the kilt, I'm wearing shorts. I guess this is the curse of doing this in the end of July rather than January when I did the other ones. Because there's some really good remains just down there. And I just don't think I like you all enough to destroy my legs walking through that to get to it. Look just how much this is spread out. You know, it's only scattered remains, but they are scattered all over the place. You know, this place truly was enormous. Just like the Abbey, Roxburgh Castle was built by David I in the early 1100s, and it quickly gained a fierce reputation. It was as formidable as Edinburgh, Stirling or Dumbarton, but Roxburgh was far closer to the border with England, so much more vulnerable. It passed between England and Scotland multiple times, but I'm only going to tell you about two of them just now. I will probably do a more full history of Roxburgh itself another time. Now, first up is probably my favourite. The year is 1314. Robert the Bruce has claimed back almost all of Scotland from occupying English forces. There are three main castles still left to capture. That is Edinburgh, Stirling and Roxburgh. And the unenviable task of capturing this place was left to the fiercest man in Scotland, the good Sir James Douglas. You might know him better as the Black Douglas. If you haven't seen the video I did about him yet, you might want to go and watch that one after this. Now, James didn't have the men to storm the walls, he didn't have the time to starve them out, so he used his brains instead of his brawn. His small force waited until Shrove Tuesday, the night before Lent, when the garrison would have themselves a wee party, be a little bit more distracted from their duties. Then they threw cowskins over their backs, and they crawled on their hands and knees towards the castle walls, slowly moving. Sorry. After a few drinks, the guards they just saw a herd of grazing cattle. Nothing to worry about. Before they knew it, hooks with rope ladders had been thrown against these walls, and Douglas was amongst them. A short but brutal fight ensued where the garrison commander took an arrow to the face. But that was it. Roxburgh had fallen to the Scots. Fast forward to 1460, Roxburgh back in English hands once again, but this time it was King James II looking to take it back, James of the Fiery Face. He went down a more traditional route of siege warfare, and by this time we had cannons. Well, we had bombards, essentially cannons. James loved them. He was the one who'd been gifted the enormous Mons Meg that sits at Edinburgh Castle today. Anyway, James's wife, Queen Mary of Guelders, arrived to watch the king capture this important fortress, and James thought he would show off by firing a cannon himself. And it exploded, killing the king in the process. Now, there was no time for mourning. Mary took over the siege, captured Roxburgh, and crowned her 8-year-old son, James III, back there at Kelso Abbey. The king is dead. Long live the king. 600 years ago, this town, that castle, that abbey made up one of the most important places in Scotland, and today I say they barely get a mention. So thank you very much for watching this and learning a wee bit about Kelso and Old Roxburgh. If you did enjoy the video, please leave me a comment, give me a follow. There's still one more video from this 4-part series to come, all about Jedburgh, and hopefully I'll see you there.